gardens, pennies from heaven. Don't you know each cloud
Your mic plugged in?
contains pennies
Yeah.
from heaven?
Here we go.
So let's find out.
In 3,
How valuable is it?
1, you're live.
Hello, 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 Santa Barbara. It's your chantress of everything valuable and beautiful, Elizabeth Stewart. I am joined today by a remarkable young woman who is going to talk to us about our botanical garden. I'd like to introduce Melissa Ha Navarro to the program, and she is Donor Relations Manager for the Santa Barbara Botanical Gardens. And I learned a little bit about her. She focuses on bolstering support for Santa Barbara Botanic Gardens conservation and research efforts as her role in Donor Relations Manager. Prior to positions at the garden, she was a marketing manager at humanitarian not-for-profits and an account manager at a consulting firm working with multinational corporations to increase their positive social and environmental impact on the world. She's lived here for a decade, and her love for Santa Barbara and its people brought her to the garden with a capital G, our garden. She cherishes the opportunity to build meaningful connections with her local community while contributing to an organization that is making an impact on the future of our planet through the power of native plants. Melissa, welcome. And what's your background? Start me with you growing up.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This is very exciting. So I grew up in Southern California, actually on the same street as Descanso Gardens. I never imagined I'd be working at a botanic garden, but here I am, and I have just been loving it. I started at Santa Barbara Botanic Garden this February, actually, so I'm coming up on 1 year. It's been such an immense privilege working here. Just the people have been amazing, both on staff here at the garden, including Tom, which is why Elizabeth had reached out, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Yeah.
Just in my role, especially as donor relations manager, I get to interface with our members, our donors, and the Santa Barbara community, I'm sure you know, is quite generous, and it's what keeps the garden going. And I've had the immense pleasure and privilege of being able to work alongside our generous community.
So here's my my take on the garden. It's been a part of my life since I almost I moved about 20 years ago, and I had why I really like the story, Tom's story, and we will get into that. Was it was kind of similar to mine in a way, and so the garden is a place of solace for me, and so I lost well, had a beloved dog that used to always come with me to walks in the garden, and I lost the dog in sort of tragic accident. And so that dog, I picture the dog in the garden and smelling the fish in the pool there, and so that's an important thing for me. Secondly, my son, my grown son, who's in his 30s, has a young family. Before his second child was born, my first grandson, anyway, their whole family visited me here in Santa Barbara. So it was my son, his wife, and my young grandson, and we, with my dog, all went to the garden many times. Each day that they were here, we went to the garden. And then my son was diagnosed with cancer. So that after that visit, I used to go to the garden and think and sort of just put it out to the universe that everything was going to be okay. So for some reason, the garden is a place where you can really get deep into, I don't know what it is, Melissa, but I wonder if you tell us Tom's story.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you so much for sharing that. I hope your son is better now. I'm 30 years old, so I that story touched me, and it's hard to hear stories like that of young people going through troubles like that. And with Tom, his daughter Anna was 27 years old when she experienced this tragedy, and their family experienced this sudden tragedy. She and I have had permission on from Tom to speak about this. She was experiencing a headache and went to a doctor, and they basically brushed it off, and she was out with some friends, and then she had to go to the hospital and was in a coma, and they were holding on to hope, and there wasn't a hope, and there wasn't a miracle, and they had to unfortunately let her go. And that was about 5 years into Tom's time here with us at the garden. And 10 years later, he's still here, and he is working at the entrance kiosk. And not only does he greet guests, but he greets staff members, including myself, when I walk into the garden for work every day. And he is just the most amazing person. He's not only a colleague, but he's become a dear friend of mine. And having people like him work here and knowing his deep connection to the garden makes this place even more special. And to me personally, makes my work more special, knowing that I'm contributing to creating a place and maintaining a place that is such a meaningful place of solace and reflection for many, many folks. And I've had the privilege of hearing similar stories of Tom's from many donors and members, and it's really incredible. The garden is so many things for so many people, and it's because of the generosity of our community that we can maintain a place where people can come and continue to come and create memories with their new grandchildren, and come back to reflect on old memories. And yeah, it's been really incredible working here.
So I want to just say Tom Rhodes is the reason that I reached out to the garden to come on the air today. And I want to reflect on his story a little bit, but I also want to mention that, dear listener, if you are listening now and you've got a similar relationship with our Santa Barbara Botanic Garden, I urge you to think about this. There's only 2 weeks left to double the impact of your donation. And they are trying to reach, the garden is trying to reach 25,000 match goal this week. And it's important, I think, because the garden itself is constantly expanding new experiences, new ways of experiencing the garden. And every time I go back, there's something new happening there. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the programs too that the garden offers. But, you know, Tom writes, the Botanic Garden, he joined as a guest services associate
Right.
15 years ago, and he was a retired jeweler. And he writes that he worked in a very confined, quiet, controlled environment. You know, he and his tools. At the garden, he writes, every moment is alive with energy. And he says familiar dogs, because he has treats at that counter. Well, I've experienced that myself.
Yeah, yeah. And actually,
And
Elizabeth,
go ahead, Melissa.
he is still a jeweler, so he continues to make jewelry, and you can find some of his pieces in our gift shop, along with lots of other goodies. So if you're looking for any last minute gifts, I'm actually wearing a pair of his earrings that he made right now for some good luck for this interview. He makes some really beautiful pieces. So if you want to check out some of his work, you can see that at our gift shop.
Oh, that is fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, you know, he also writes that over the years, 15 years, he's picked up how to say welcome to the garden in German, Korean, Russian, Hebrew, Mandarin, and a few more languages. And he says it's something funny, I think. If he greets somebody in a language that he is practicing, his accent is good enough that they continue on in their own language. And he has to say,
Right.
well, all I know how to say is hello, welcome to the garden.
That's right. Yeah. His German
Remarkable.
accent is pretty good, and he keeps a notebook at the kiosk, and it's a couple pages long, and he has, boy, like 25 different languages scribbled down. And anytime he meets someone who speaks a language that he doesn't have written down, he will write hello, how are you in that language. So he is very, very personable. He takes the time to get to know every single guest, and that's really reflective of the spirit of the garden. And we want to make sure everybody feels welcome here and that they feel seen and noticed. And it's not just transactional. It's a place that people come and feel that they're coming home to. And
Right.
travelers from all around the world really feel like they belong at the garden.
So I have that you won't believe this, Melissa, but my ex-husband is the father of my son, um, has remained a good friend throughout our entire lives. And we didn't fit together well as married people after a certain amount of time, but we sure fit together well as good friends. Now, he has not seen the garden. He lives elsewhere and he hasn't seen the garden. He's on wife 5 or 6 right now, and she is a devotee of orchids. So they're flying in to see the orchid show, and I am going to take them to the garden.
You should,
And
Elizabeth. I
isn't
can't
that
believe you never
amazing?
come in.
Yeah, so we're going to go to the garden and check it out as long as she's coming for the orchids. I know she's a plant lover, and I'll get to know her a little bit better. Tell me more facts about the garden. I know you've got 110,000 people of all ages per year, and it's a county regulated capacity. So how
It
does that work?
is. Yeah, so because we're in a residential area, we have what's
Ah,
called a conditional use permit, which caps our capacity at 110,000 visitors a year. So as you can imagine, it does cap our revenue at a limit every year. So we do heavily rely on donations to keep our garden going, which is why our fundraising efforts, such as right now, our fall appeal campaign, is so important to maintain the garden and to support our efforts across conservation and research, our horticulture and education programs. But beyond that, the garden is this amazing historical place. We're at a really exciting time where we're about to hit our 100 years. The garden was founded in 1926, so we're going to hit our centennial in 2026, which is really, really exciting. I'm not sure if you know this, but the Santa Barbara Botanic Garden was the first botanic garden in the entire nation to focus exclusively on native plants. So we have a ton of knowledge over the past nearly a century where we have been gathering just our knowledge about how the native plants are interacting with different pollinators to really support our biodiversity, which is increasingly important as we're facing threats like climate change and different environmental impacts. And that's really what we're focusing our next century on is how does our conservation and research work support the health and well-being of people and our planet?
I understand that's super important. And I was reflecting also, on gardens, how important gardens like yours are for the I guess you would say almost like the seed banks of the world.
Right.
There's various places that have, devoted themselves to local and native plants. Um, who knows, they might be disappearing. Um, have you experienced at the garden any kind of loss of culture of bioculture at all?
I'm so happy you brought that up. So we do have a conservation seed bank on site at our Pritzlaff Conservation Center. So that seed bank, we hold 3.7 million and increasing seeds in that seed bank. So this is an insurance policy against extinction. Our team goes up and down California, all 8 Channel Islands, down into Baja to look at the rarest plants. And these are plants that are at risk of extinction, and collect seeds. And we safeguard them in our seed bank here on site. And we also send a couple of those seeds through each of these collections to the National Seed Bank in Colorado. And this is really just to protect what is out there in the wild, but the idea isn't just to hold it in the seed bank. We also want to support restoration efforts. So we do that. We have active restoration projects going on here in Santa Barbara and across the Central Coast. And actually, our rare plant team here at the garden has been involved in recovery efforts on the Channel Islands. So last year, we were involved in a multi-year collaborative effort, and we were able to delist. So there was a plant, the Santa Cruz Island lift rubber, Dudleya, which was on the state and federal endangered species list, and that was successfully recovered. So it's no longer endangered. And this year, Sean Carson, who is on our rare plant team, also rediscovered it was a Saint Daisy. I'm definitely botching that name, but he found a plant on one of the islands that hadn't been seen for over 60 years, which was really, really exciting. So our team is actively going out into the field and looking for rare plants and putting in measures to help safeguard them. So we're really involved in various conservation efforts, making sure that we can protect the rarest of plants out there and then supporting and recovery efforts.
So this is a question, and I don't know if you're able to answer this, but so if you compare the size of Santa Barbara to the impact of our garden, our botanic garden, how do we rank nationally?
Well, that is a good question. I mean, our team is 88 people currently. So I would say we're much smaller than institutions, but the scope of our work is pretty large for how small we are. We have 55 active projects right now in partnership with local and national agencies. So we work with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We work with the Bureau of Land Management. And our relationship with them, we do a lot of consulting work, so we are informing their practices. So our scope is quite large for how small we are as a team. So it's hard to put a number against that, but when you look at how small our team is, our impact is actually really quite large. And then when you look at how important California is, California is the California Floristic Province, actually, which is California and Baja and stretches up north, is actually one of 36 biodiversity hotspots in the entire world, which means we have a really large concentration of species that only happen or only occur and exist in California. So it's really important that we protect these species. And when you look at that, the work becomes even more important in California itself. And that's the work that we're doing at Santa Barbara Botanic Garden, which I mean, I may be biased, but our work the importance increases exponentially when you look at those factors.
I understand that. Yeah, that's what I was getting at is, the scope of what you do regards the size of Santa Barbara, and people come from all over the world to see the Santa Barbara Botanical Gardens. What's so interesting to me is a couple of years ago when you opened the backcountry, I came with my family. I wonder if you could talk to me about that. I thought that was remarkable. Was that land that you already had, or
It
how did that happen?
was.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. So we had that land, but we went onto, we did a fundraising campaign and we really wanted to develop that area so that it could be usable for more kids and families. And it's so important to cultivate this next generation and engage them with nature. And I think it came at such an important time during COVID, and when you're seeing more kids on their iPads, and there's so many kids that come here, and there's play structures in there now that are very still that still feel wild and natural, and they are engaging with nature now. And the Botanic Garden isn't just a place for adults, and they're actually excited to come to the Botanic Garden and be in nature. So it's such an important way for us to engage with kids and create that connection for them with nature so that they feel like they can participate and they have that connection.
So so it was land that you had already and it wasn't, so the fundraising part of that, I was just always curious about that. The fundraising part of that was to make the trails, is that correct?
Yeah, to make the trails and to make a couple structures in there. So the
Right.
maze back there, there's a structure that kids can climb. And then we have a program in there called the Casitas program. And so we have some artists that come in there and there's some rotating structures. I think they go up every 2 years. And there's these, it's very artistic. And so we have about 4 or 5 that go up, and some artists come in and they'll build these with natural materials, and kids can play with them and engage with them. So yeah, I encourage everyone, kids and adults, to come in and explore that section. It's ever changing, and it's been a really incredible place.
So just out of interest, so when I bring my ex-husband and his wife, he is not not a spring chicken anymore. When we do the backcountry, how strenuous is that?
Not strenuous. There's a path, and we really pride ourselves on our accessibility. We do have some trails that are a bit more strenuous. We opened up our Tipton Trail on the east side of the garden, which is a 1.3 mile hike that is a bit of an incline, but I would say the backcountry, we see people of all ages. I've seen people in some electronic wheelchairs back there too. So I would say he can do it with no problem.
That's good to hear. Richard, you're giving us a sign we have to go to quick break. When we get back, I honestly, Melissa, I want to know more about you. And I know you grew up by a garden, but I want to know what your background is, your education, etc. And how you landed this job, etc., etc. So I want to know more about your personal story when we get back from the break.
Sounds
Dear
great.
listeners, we're talking with Melissa Ho Navarro, and she is the donor director of the Santa Barbara Botanical Gardens. And it's my pleasure to talk about the gardens today, remembering that this is the final couple of weeks of their fundraise drive. And it's super important, as Melissa is saying, for us to acknowledge what a treasure we have whenever there's something, I don't know, happy or sad in my life. I always find myself looking up at those great big trees at the bottom of the garden there. Anyway, let's go to quick break, Richard, and we get back. I want to hear about Melissa's life. Don't turn that down. Back in a minute.
And you are clear. Okay. Do. Okay.
The break, Richard. Can I
I'm-
use the bathroom real quick?
Go for it
Okay.
quickly.
Thanks.
Return to dashboard. All right, Elizabeth. I need you back, Elizabeth.
I'm here. I'm here.
All right. She'll be back in just a moment. All right. Here we
Okay,
go.
My video is not working.
That's all right. That's all right. As long as you see my cues, you take the breaks. We got 2 more breaks to take. Here we go in 3, 2, 1. You're live.
Welcome back. It's Elizabeth Stewart. I'm talking with Melissa Ha Navarro, who is Donor Relations Manager at the Santa Barbara Botanical Garden. Melissa, tell me about your background.
Yeah, thank you. So I am General Relations Manager here. I grew up in Southern California, on the same street as Descanso Gardens. I've been fortunate enough to be with Santa Barbara Botanic Garden since February, so coming up on a year here.
Um,
So your education, tell me about that.
Yes,
Tell me.
yes.
Yeah.
So I went to UCSB, so I'm a fellow Gaucho, and I just fell in love with Santa Barbara and never left. I was fortunate enough to study under their amazing global studies program, which I had no idea that major even existed until I came to UCSB. So I actually played around with a couple different majors at first. I thought I wanted to do economics, but I just wasn't in love with it. And then I took a couple sociology classes and then heard about global studies. I was really attracted to the fact that it was a interdisciplinary major, which meant that I was able to take courses from several different majors. I was able to take classes from religious studies, public policy, sociology, art history. So a little bit of everything, really. And so I graduated with a global studies degree. And following that, I went into the humanitarian nonprofits field. And nonprofits and service has been something that was instilled in me at a really young age through my mom. She's always been a volunteer, like from a very, very young age, and just her as a person always giving back. So I always knew I wanted to be in the nonprofit field. So right out of college, I jumped into the nonprofit world, working at a local nonprofit, and from there, started my marketing career and worked at several different humanitarian nonprofits, and then went into a consulting firm doing similar work, but in the corporate world, did some social impact and environmental impact work. But it was a fully remote world, and the impact felt far away. And I was working with some multinational corporations, and it was a really, really incredible experience. But I was craving local connection, and my husband is serving his local community, and he started about 9 years ago. He started a local business, and he just loves what he does. And he
Well, what's his business?
yeah, so a quick plug for my husband. He owns the local skate shop, Lighthouse Skate Shop. They just moved onto State Street and they celebrated 8 years this year. So he absolutely loves his job, and he engages with kids every single day. And I felt a little bit of jealousy, and he comes home from work just with a huge smile on his face every single day, and just seemed like he was living the happiest life. And he is living the happiest life. He is the most amazing person and partner. And I felt like I wanted that. And so I took a little break from work and saw this role at the Botanic Garden, and I felt really drawn to it because it had a lot of the elements that my husband loved in his work, which was that connection to the Santa Barbara community. And so I applied to the role at the garden and have just absolutely fallen in love with the people. And the role here just allows me to create really deep, meaningful relationships with my community, and give back. And I think the fundraising element for our conservation programs allows me to play a role in shaping our future in some way. And I think, especially in this political climate, it's easy to draw back and feel a little helpless. And this is my way of feeling like I'm contributing and coming to work every day and feel like I'm doing something and being active and participating and shaping the future.
Now, you say your husband runs the Lighthouse Skate Shop?
That's correct.
Oh, I know where that is. And yes. So he is he's a skater?
He is. I would say he's more of a surfer now. But yes, he is a skater. He and his name is Spencer. He and his best friend Norrin started this skate shop about 8.5 years ago. They were both managers at local skate shops for several years, and they had this beautiful opportunity to open up their own skate shop, and they've just been loving it since.
That is so interesting. It's I'm thinking, well, okay, so you strike me as kind of an intellectual and extremely well qualified and well educated, et cetera, et cetera. And here you are, married to Spencer, who's we used to call in my high school years kind of a jock. He's a sports guy, you know, and loves the sporting life. So
Yeah, it's a
how did
funny
you?
mix, huh? We're
Yeah,
very polar opposites, I will say that. But it
and
works. We balance each other out perfectly. He's the love of my life, and he's amazing.
and how did you guys meet?
We, surprisingly enough, we met at one of those mountain parties up in Gibraltar. It's pretty funny. I can't believe I'm sharing this on live radio, but yeah,
Well,
it just,
I'll
yeah,
tell you
we
something.
randomly were both there, and then we hung out every day after that.
So it was a mountain party, just like a mountain drive, old fashioned mountain drive party.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's amazing. Well, you never know, do you? I mean, life is a funny way of um, forcing you to go to the other side, shall we say?
Right,
So,
exactly. I
hey,
never
Richard,
looked back since.
never look back since. Yes, yes. I think I actually when I was talking to you, Melissa, about, hosting my ex-husband, my son's father at the garden coming up real soon here. It is sort of back to back with the Orchid Show. And I have to say that we are so similar, he and I. That was our problem. I mean, we were both involved in the arts. We were both these sort of type A personalities. We were both, wanting to be the center of whatever was happening at any given point. Um, we both came from a background of theater. And I mean, it just was like, okay, we competed.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that was kind of, oh, Richard, you're giving us a sign we have to go to quick break. Okay. So when we get back from the break, I want to talk about something that's super important to the garden, and that's the classes and the courses and the kind of things that you guys offer. I know for a while back, a girlfriend of mine took a master gardener class with you guys, and that's a prestigious degree. And that's a little known thing that the garden holds these talks and classes. I want to talk a little bit more about that when we get back from the blaze. I'm reintroducing Melissa Hanavaro, and Melissa Did you take your husband's last name? It's such an interesting last name.
Yeah, so Ha is my maiden name, and then I hyphenated it with Navarro, which is my husband's name.
Oh, that's yeah. I was thinking about that is so interesting. So just this fascinating interview with you, Melissa. Don't turn that down, dear listener. We're talking about, well, of course, we're talking about Melissa herself, but we're talking about her role as donor relations manager at the Santa Barbara Botanic Garden. You can't take the personal away from the public, really. And it's been our experience, Richard and I, doing this show almost 20 years. People love to hear about people in the community, as you say, Melissa. Yeah. So we get back, we'll talk about the courses, the classes, the outreach. Every time I go to the garden, I bring a plant back to try to see if I can grow it. The little shed there with the plants. Okay, don't turn that down. Back in a minute.
Warren, you are clear. This is the last break before the close at 55, Elizabeth.
Got it. So, Melissa, it's funny, my brother, David, is a skateboarder or was a skateboarder. Now he's 60 years old. But he still goes to the skate park. He's actually living in Spain.
Oh,
And
wow.
there's a skate park in the community in Malaga where he lives. And it's a bunch of young kids and then the 60-year-old guy who's
All right, we're
still.
coming back. Coming back
Okay.
in 3, 2, 1. You are live.
Welcome back. It's Elizabeth Stewart talking with Donor Relations Manager Melissa Ha Navarro. And we're learning about the garden a little bit, the Santa Barbara Botanical Garden. And Melissa, tell me a little bit about the classes and what the garden offers. And also, have you taken any of them?
Yes, I have. The staff here is really fortunate to get a few free classes a year. The garden really invests in our professional development. But one of the most exciting new courses we offer is the California Native Landscapers course, and that's led by our horticultural educator, Alejandro Lemos. And this is a couple weeks course, and it's really aimed at training landscapers, even hobbyist gardeners to take care of various native plants in their home gardens. So this course is offered a couple different times a year. It's at a really great price point, and it's offered both in on Zoom, so virtually, and at the garden. And it's really flexible, so it works with your schedule. And I encourage everyone to check this out. Alejandro is a fantastic, fantastic educator. People absolutely love taking classes with him. He's incredibly, incredibly charismatic and engaging. So check that out on our website. In addition to that, we have several classes, both for kids and for adults. We have our director of horticulture, Keith Nevison, who offers some lectures from time to time, as well as our nature educators, and gardeners who offer some lectures, our conservationists who offer lectures as well. And then we have some health and wellness classes as well. We do some yoga at the garden, some nature immersion or forest bathing classes. So we do have something for everybody at the garden.
So tell me, the forest bathing, did you say?
Yeah. So I had the pleasure of taking one of these forest bathing classes. It's really a nature immersion where you go around through different sections of the garden and you meditate really, and it's a guided immersion. I did it with an amazing, amazing woman named Elena Rios, and she guides you around the garden, and you you're still in nature, and she guides you with some words, and then you just sit in nature and you just bask in its stillness, and you take in the different smells and the different sounds, and it's a different way of connecting. And I've found through this 1 hour or 2 hour practice that now when I walk through the garden, I'm connecting with it in a very different way.
I have to ask you this very important question. What's Spencer's favorite part of the garden?
That's a really good question. He just enjoys walking through it. I think it never gets old, you know. There's something different every single day. So I have a family membership, just because I'm a staff member. So he he gets to come for free whenever he wants, and there's something different all year round, and he just enjoys coming by and seeing what's blooming at different times of the year. So right now, when you stop by, we have some of our winter blooms, like the manzanitas, that are starting to come in. But in the spring, when the garden is the most alive, you'll see the meadow in full bloom. So it's really different. And I didn't know much about native plants, and so when we walk around now, I get to point out the different native plants and their names that I've learned, and I get to quiz him on different things. And so we just have a lot of fun just talking about all these different native plants. And we've started transforming our own yard with native plants. And so I've been teaching him, and actually Alejandro has been teaching us about different watering, like when to water the plants. And so Spencer's been learning about that. We've killed a couple native plants in our yard from overwatering, but Spencer's been learning, which is good.
That's my problem is overwatering for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So one of the things that was remarkable to me to learn is the garden was founded by a woman in the 20s.
that's right.
And I know you mentioned that, but the garden has always been, I don't know. Let me go back in time a little bit. So I
Yeah.
was in the Peace Corps years ago, younger than you are, and I was stationed in Africa and in West Africa. And minute I started to understand where I was outside of Lagos, Nigeria. I associated that with the polarity of femininity
Mm.
and that area of the world is a mother somehow. And I felt it. So when I'm at the garden, I feel a real feminine presence, and there's a legacy of really powerful women.
Yeah.
Tell me what you know, Melissa, about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, this place was established by, we owe it all to a woman named Anna Dorinda Blakely Bliss. She purchased the first 13 acres in Mission Canyon, that is the garden today. And she purchased these first 13 acres with the request that it be developed into a garden, which of course we now know is the first botanic garden in the nation that is focused exclusively on native plants. And that was in 1926. And what she did there was she purchased that with the direction that it is dedicated to her father, Henry Blakesley. And she, at the same time, also created an endowment so that the garden can be taken care for.
So yeah, so that this is, a very Santa Barbara story. The Natural History Museum, the Art Museum, all these incredible civic, strong organizations that were started in the 20s by important, powerful women. I mean, um, Pearl Chase, for example, who set the tone of the city early on in the 20s and was the founder of the Unity Shop, which I mean, these powerhouse females in the community. Likewise, the Botanic Garden, the Blakesley connection there. Um, so, Melissa, what are you requiring as regards donations? What do you need? What is your goal? What are you planning to do?
Yeah, so we for this year in this campaign we have a goal of 40,000 more dollars by the end of this year. And this really supports our horticulture programs, our education programs, and our conservation and research programs. So we're really hoping to close this gap in funding for $40,000 by the end of this year. And this week we are matching gifts up to $25,000. This was through a generous donor. So really, if any dollar counts, anybody who's listening, please go to our website, sbbotanicgarden.org, and you can make a donation of any amount there. That would really, really help us. Like we shared earlier, our visitation is capped. So we aren't able to have a unlimited amount of revenue through tickets. people coming in. And so we really do heavily rely on donations to keep this place running.
And you, it's so any amount helps? Are you looking for a certain amount per person?
I mean, if you want to donate $1 million, we would absolutely love
Nobody,
that.
right.
But whatever you can donate, we're very grateful. Any amount you can donate this year would be great.
And have you been surprised with any donations at this point?
I mean, I think we're just, we're grateful for any amount. Every person's circumstance is different. So I think it really depends on the person, $50 to one person means something different to somebody else. So I think it's less about the dollar amount, but really the person and like what circumstance they're in. And I recognize that. And I'm touched by even the $10 gifts that some people give. And it really, every donation that comes in, the people on the development team see and we process, and we're all just very grateful for the $5 gifts up to the $10,000 gifts that we receive.
I guess what I was asking is the situation now in the USA, is it has it slowed down the donation? Are people
See.
kind of you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think in an election year, you always see some like donations drop. People are putting their money into campaigns. So it has been a little slow this year. I'll be honest with you. So we have taken a toll with that. So this campaign at this end of the year, we do need help. And so I'm grateful for you, Elizabeth, for having us on here and getting the word out. And we're grateful for the listeners who can donate, because we could use your help at the end of this year. We've seen a hit with the elections, and we have some uncertainty in the coming years. And so any support that people can provide would be really helpful.
Well, we have to say goodbye, but Melissa, I hope to meet you in person one day.
Yes.
The interviews on Zoom.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much for having me. Anytime you're in the garden, please stop by the caretaker's cottage. This is where my office is. I'd love to go on a walk around the garden with you.
That would be fantastic. So Richard, I think we're at the end of the hour, and yeah, thank you very much, Melissa. And yeah, if people are interested in donating, go online, Santa Barbara Botanical Garden, and do yourself a favor and throw a few bucks in their direction. As Melissa was saying, election year, it's a bit slow. That's an important thing for our community. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you so much. Happy holidays.
Same.
All right. You are both clear, and Elizabeth's gone.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks
You're
for
very
having me.
welcome.
This was
Thank
fun.
you. It was fun. Thank you again. And she's gone.